Sherry Robertson is totally blind. She lost her eyesight in a tragic accident when she was just 19 years old, and for the next 2 decades she lived her life in complete darkness. Sherry believed she would be blind for life, but in 2004 something extraordinary happened. She started to see again.
I said, "Oh my God, I see it." There.
Sherry is the guinea pig in an extraordinary bionic experiment that has transformed this ordinary Midwestern girl into one of the world's first cyborgs, a fusion of human and machine. Her brain has been implanted with a groundbreaking artificial vision system.
I'm getting ready to blow, guys.
It's a procedure so radical that it's still unapproved by the US government. Despite this, Sherry was willing to go under the knife to prove that bionic vision can restore sight to the blind. Sherry is just one example of how the science fiction dream of bionics is becoming real. In the UK, patients are being fitted with the world's first fully functional bionic hand.
So I tense the top muscles to open, like that. I tense the bottom muscles to close, like that.
18-year-old Evan Reynolds lost his arm in a car accident last year. Now he's on the way to becoming a real-life bionic boy. Evan and Sherry are both at the forefront of bionics. They are human experiments that give us a glimpse of what the future of medicine has in store. But Sherry doesn't call herself the bionic woman. She goes by another name.
I am now the robot chick.
Sherry Robertson lives with her mother Susie in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, he twisted some of my hair.
Sherry has been blind since 1989, and Susie takes care of her full time. But she never could have dreamed that this would mean learning to plug an artificial vision system into her daughter's head.
Sherry was always a leader. You know, she wasn't a follower, she was a leader. As she was growing up and I was growing, we were, kind of growing up together there. If something happened, we didn't skirt it, we faced it and we handled it, And there's a lot of things that's happened in our life that was not easy.
Growing up through high school in the 80s, Sherry was a popular girl who had no trouble fitting in.
I was a dancer. I did tap and jazz, ballet and toe, I twirled a baton, and I did acrobatics. And all this time I did have my vision. I had perfect vision.
She was very bubbly, very smiley, very pretty, the kind of girl that could pretty much get any boyfriend she wanted. Sherry was one of these people, you pass her in the hallway and you say hi to her, she always spoke to you.
In the autumn of 1989, Sherry had started college and had her whole life ahead of her. But then came the accident that would rob her of her sight and her future. It happened when Sherry and her boyfriend Russell were driving to relatives for Thanksgiving.
I guess we must have left about 5:30 Thanksgiving morning. I reclined the seat, and I had my seatbelt on. I always wore my seatbelt. And I reclined the seat all the way back, and I turned on my side where I was facing the driver. And the seatbelt was getting my neck, so I took it off. And Russell fell asleep. And he crossed the white line. We finally ended up hitting head-on with this Toyota truck. I just came forward from a completely reclined position and smashed my head on the gear shift.
I was standing by the phone when it rang and I couldn't answer it. I knew it was the call I didn't want to get. I said, "How bad is it?" And he said, "Well, they say it's as bad as it can be." And I said, "She's not dead, she can't be." Excuse me, I'm going right back.
Sherry's injuries were so severe that it was a miracle she made it to the hospital alive.
She received severe damage to the front of her face, upper face, and front part of the brain, and both eyeballs were damaged and had to be removed.
My brain, when it was swelling, was coming out between my eyes. And so I know they had to remove a small part of my right frontal lobe. And they had to cut clear across on the left side of my head as well so they could lift up my skull and pick the bones from my nose out of my brain.
Against all odds, the surgeons were able to save Sherry's life, but they were unable to save her sight.
The contents of the eye, all the retina and the structures that were responsible for vision were pretty much gone. It was sort of like a camera without film. There really wasn't any hope in my mind, even when I first saw her, that this was anything we could salvage in terms of vision.
All I prayed for the whole way was, please let her live. I didn't even think eyes, nose, I just please let her live, because she don't deserve this,
When she finally came around, weeks after the accident, not only did Sherry have no memory of what had happened, she now had to face up to the fact that she would never see again.
I don't think I realized I had lost my sight, and the doctor came in to talk to my mom. And he said, there's really no hope. And when I heard that, I just thought, oh, I guess I'm going to have to learn how to do things a little differently.
But as she learned how to live with being blind, Sherry had no way of knowing just how different her life would turn out to be. She was destined to become a human guinea pig in one of the most amazing medical experiments ever attempted. "37-year-old Sherry Robertson is one of the world's first cyborgs, part human, part machine. She's taking part in a radical experiment in bionic vision that has the potential to end blindness forever. Sherry was just 19 when she was blinded in a car crash, and as she recovered, her doctors were worried not only about her physical injuries, but about the psychological trauma that came with losing her sight.
The doctors kept telling my mom, oh, she's going to hit an emotional wall any day. Remember that, Mom? Mm-hmm. She's going to hit a wall. And I never did. And they would come in and see me, Andrew, and say, you feel like committing suicide? No. And then I'd have a lot of problems. I'd be depressed and probably then pumping my stomach or something and blind. And I'm like, no, I don't want to commit suicide. I want to get on with my life. But they got really worried because I wasn't doing what they thought, acting the way they thought I should.
For the next 15 years, Sherry learned to live with being blind. She assumed that she would never see again. She didn't know that she was destined to become part of an amazing medical experiment to make the dream of bionic vision become real.
Just the idea that I would be able to see outlines and shapes or even just flashes of light at first was incredible to me. And I wanted to do it.
A camera on Sherry's glasses acts as an artificial eye. It sends a signal to the computer around Sherry's waist. The computer translates this signal into electrical impulses which are sent through cables directly to Sherry's visual cortex, the part of her brain that deals with sight. And when Sherry's brain is stimulated in this way, something amazing happens.
Oh, wait. What? Wait, don't move.
She sees what the camera sees. This incredible invention was the brainchild of one pioneering scientist who would stop at nothing to prove that he had the cure for blindness. His name was William Dobell. Dobell was a maverick operating on the fringes of the medical establishment.
He was an amazing man. I talked to him on the phone many times. He's basically started to want to know what happens when you stimulate the brain. And if you stimulate it in certain places, how does the brain react?
Dobell's extraordinary idea was to create artificial vision by simply plugging a video camera directly into the brain of a blind person. There was only one problem. To prove that bionic vision would work, Dobell needed to experiment on human guinea pigs. But getting government approval for such extreme surgery would take years, so rather than wait, Dobell simply advertised for volunteers and began his own trials in Portugal.
Well, my aunt was reading the paper one day and she saw an article about a Dr. Dobell who had developed this incredible artificial vision implant. The idea was that they could put these electrodes on my visual cortex and I would be able to see via stimulation of these electrodes through a camera that would be on my sunglasses lens.
Dobell needed blind volunteers who'd been born with perfect vision and later lost it. And since Sherry had been 19 when she lost her sight back in 1989, she was just the sort of patient he was looking for.
He said that I was perfect for this surgery because of how I lost my sight, because I was 19 and my cortex was matured, and I had no optic nerves, I had no eyes, and that I would be good for this. It would probably work for me.
Sherry volunteered for surgery in 2003, 15 years after her original accident. The operation would be painful, expensive, and there was no guarantee that it would work. But Sherry was determined to become a pioneer of bionic vision, whatever the risks.
I wanted to help them to be able to use me to learn and further the project for other blind people.
Sherry felt this was an opportunity to turn her blindness into something positive, but her mother Susie wasn't so sure.
I was feeling very emotional about it. You know, I thought, oh, Lord God, is this really what you want her to do?
Sherry flew to Portugal for surgery in October 2004. But the day before the operation, she got a shock when the doctors explained exactly what it would involve.
They described to me how the surgery was going to take place, what would happen. And the doctor stood behind me, and he put his finger behind my right ear, and he traced a line up the side of my head, across the top of my head, and down the left side of my head behind my ear. And he said, we're going to make the incision here. And I was getting a little nervous. And he said, then we're going to pull your skull back.
Basically, this is a very simple craniotomy. You open the skull and expose the occipital lobe. You actually don't do anything to the brain itself. You want to leave it alone. And these, they look like little playing cards, essentially, with all these little electrodes poked through them. It lays on the brain.
I was looking at the thing that was going to go in her head, and all these little wires, you know, that come off of it. And I thought, they can't put that in her head just by putting two little holes, you know, one on each side of her head for the post to come out. There's no way. And to my fear, he showed us how they're going to put it in there.
He told me they would close my head up and drill holes in the back of my head so that the terminals could fit through.
Despite these last-minute doubts, Sherry felt that having traveled halfway around the world, she couldn't back out now.
I was hoping she would change her mind when we got there and they explained everything to her, but, you know, I'm not the one that's blind. She is. All I could do is say, well, honey, I'm there with you. Whatever you want to do, Mom will be with you.
So, the very next day, the operation went ahead, as planned. It took more than 4 hours. First, the back of Sherry's scalp would be peeled away from her head. Then the surgeons would cut a section out of her skull to expose her brain. Next, 2 plates, each containing hundreds of electrodes, would be inserted between the folds of her brain, right on the visual cortex. 2 large holes would then be drilled through the back of Sherry's skull to allow the terminals to be implanted. Another metal plate would be fitted to the top of her head to ground the electricity running through the system. Finally, Sherry's head would be stitched back together and she would begin the long road to recovery.
When I woke up, my head was all nice and wrapped really tight, and I had a massive headache. So I decided I was going to feel the back of my head and see what it felt like. And even though I had the bandages all around my head, I could feel the terminals sticking out behind my head, and I thought, wow.
When the skull is replaced, we leave a burr hole about, well, big enough for the post to come through. So those wires come out of that. The post is attached to it so that she has something to plug herself into, so to speak.
But there was a complication. One of Sherry's terminals continued to leak brain fluid, and more operations were needed to fix it.
The skull didn't want to heal around that metal plug, and she's had some drainage almost ever since. It just never wants to heal, which It's trying to heal around a foreign body, and our bodies naturally, normally reject those things.
I could see this dripping of the brain fluid out of that post. Every night, I'd get up in the middle of the night to see what it was doing when it wouldn't quit. And oh, no, it's still, because it would run down and be all over the pillow, you know.
Sherry's head took several more months to heal, and all the time she was desperately hoping that the operation would prove a success.
I actually thought that they would hook up their cables to my head and flip a switch and boom, I would just see all these lights.
In fact, the scientists didn't know if the implant would work at all. They had to test each of the electrodes individually to find out which ones were live.
He would push the button and say now, and I would say no, now, no. It just went on until finally he said now, and I saw a flash of light.
And all of a sudden I saw her, and you know, up her hands went, ah, I can't tell you the feeling, almost the feeling when you first see a baby born.
It was kind of like if I was in a dark room and someone came in and shined a big flash of light right in my face. I thought, oh, praise the Lord, it worked. I must say I did. It just took my breath away every time I could see something.
After several weeks of tests, Sherry was ready to bring the system home. But it was her mum, Susie, who had to learn how to hook it up.
Unfasten it. Now, this is the battery, this runs everything. This is the computer, and this is the stimulator. I have a little screwdriver. And Sherry has caps on. I have to take the caps off. And there is the electrodes. So.
Wow, that popped right in.
Screw it in. One down. And Sherry, you know that you've got a little leakage here. After the surgery, she had all the problems. She had it with this terminal. This one here is the one that continued leaking.
Sherry is presently only using 10 out of a possible 484 electrodes on her visual cortex. She's able to see contrasts, but is not using her bionic vision to anything like its full potential.
With 10 electrodes, I can just see a couple of flashes of light when anything goes in front of my camera.
They're not all hooked up because we didn't want to overload her brain with all of these electrodes at the same time in places that the brain's certainly not used to having them fired.
Sometimes, and I don't know really what makes the difference, maybe it's if the object is really dark. Sometimes the lights will flash in brighter. And I'll always say to my mom, oh, it blinded me. I'm waiting for an upgrade to come along so I can use all of my electrodes. Because when I can use all of my electrodes, or at least the majority, then I will be able to see the outline of what I'm looking at. And I can guarantee you, once I've got that, I'll be turning on every day.
While she waits for the upgrade, Sherry still needs to hook up regularly to test her system. But recently she's become worried that something might be going wrong.
When I turn this on, it takes about 2 minutes for it to boot up. And the way I know that it's booted is because I'll hear a series of beeps. And I cover the camera while I'm waiting for that because I'll be more prepared when it is booted up and I take my hand away and I start seeing the light. If I didn't do that, it would be a real shock when it just came on and I wasn't prepared. So I'm going to turn it on and we'll listen for the beeps. I haven't heard any beeps, have you, Mom?
Not a beep, It should be beeping by now.
Not a thing, it didn't do any beeping.
It didn't do any beeping.
Oh, wait.
What?
Wait, don't move.
Don't move.
I saw some lights, something was happening, but it's not doing it again.
So it's trying to work.
Yes.
Let me make sure everything's plugged in okay.
I saw 2 flashes, just little flashes when I saw you, but it's not doing it again. They weren't as big as they usually are. They were just kind of little white lights, one right on top of the other.
And from your experience of using it, what do you think is that likely to be?
Oh. Oh. That's this.
It could be in the battery then.
It's in the battery. It's this.
I'm not getting enough juice, yeah.
Hear it?
I'm getting ready to blow, guys. Well, I took my hand away from the camera to see if it was working, even though I didn't hear the boot up beats. And as I was scanning and I went across my mom, I saw two small dots. They were much smaller than what I would normally see. But then when the battery started making that beeping noise, then I knew that I wasn't seeing my dots like I should because the battery is old or it's going dead. So then when I turned it off, I felt like little thumps right in the top of my head. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's like the electrodes letting up off the brain. I've never really experienced that until just recently, but it has to be because the battery is bad.
Sherry is now faced with a difficult situation. She hasn't received the continuing care she was promised for a good reason. Bill Dobell, the inventor of the artificial vision system, died suddenly in 2006 at the age of just 59.
Unfortunately, Dr. Dobell died, and a lot of the research was put on hold. And then, unfortunately, it lost its funding because it didn't have a chief researcher.
Without FDA approval or funding, Sherry has been left in limbo, with nobody to continue her treatment. Her bionic experiment is only half finished. She hopes it hasn't all been in vain. Bionic technology isn't just being used to treat blindness. The UK is leading the way in the development of bionic limbs, and the world's first truly bionic hand is about to be given to a few test patients. One of these bionic people will be 18-year-old Evan Reynolds. Evan likes the idea of being a bionic boy, and for him, it will be one more challenging step in his recovery from the accident that cost him his arm.
I just remember sort of pulling my arm back in the car and I thought I'd just broken my thumb or something. I pulled my arm, I was going to my friend, stop. And he turns to me and he just looks, he goes, don't look at it, don't look at it.
Evan Reynolds lives in Surrey. 18 years old, he's studying for his A-levels and is a keen rugby player.
When I get into it, I really get into it.
Evan's determination on the pitch is even more amazing when you realise what makes him different from his teammates. He has only one hand.
I think in some ways the accident did actually help me be more aggressive. I know I used to be that good at tackling, but now since I've had this, for some reason I'm more aggressive and I can get into my mindset and just start hitting people harder.
18 months ago, this young man with everything to look forward to had an accident that could have completely destroyed his life.
Is the dent?
Yeah, I think that's my arm. I think my arm did that. The car drove through here and I waved like that, and as I came along, I pulled this arm back in, turned, I think I clipped my head and my arm got trapped in between the corner of it and the back of the window. And it was degloved, which is where the hand comes off and all the skin sort of split up here. And as it was pulled off, it sort of took half the muscles.
Gate, there was a kind of a hook on there where the hand had stayed on the hook.
I just literally thought I'd broken my thumb, whatever, and I thought I'd cut my arm a bit, and I thought I'd broke my wrist. I was like, oh, I've ruined my hand, whatever. Sort of got out of the car, about here, I walked around a bit just going, oh, I don't know what to do. Rory comes along and grabs my arm and sort of puts a tourniquet around my arm, stop the blood.
I had leather between my legs, like on the grass, and my trousers were like soaked like that, just with blood.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you did perfectly, yeah, exactly. It did exactly what needed to be done at the end of the day.
Evan was rushed to hospital, but his arm could not be reattached. He now had to face the prospect of being one-handed for the rest of his life.
My initial reaction was, I'd never be able to do anything again. When it happens, you're devastated. You don't understand it. You don't know whatever's going to happen. Like, I just thought that was it. When you get home, it's sort of the reality hits, and you're like, this is it. This is what I've got to deal with for the rest of my life. And I remember every day having to redo the bandages, and the stench, that's what it really got me. It was like dying flesh and like just all healing and stuff, like horrible stench. And that really got to me. That was like, I used to just like be in tears every time after that, but it really builds your strength of character. I feel like a stronger person now.
Even though Evan's hand is no longer attached to his arm, he can still feel sensations in a phantom hand.
I can actually feel my hand there still, like, and I can move my fingers in my mind. But no, I don't really feel much pain apart from phantom pain, which is the pain of, it feels, how can I describe it? It feels like your hand's being crushed into like that sort of shape, and pins and needles constantly. And something's really strong, and when it gets really bad, it feels like your hand's covered in paper cuts. It's absolutely bizarre.
Evan didn't know it, but these phantom feelings were giving scientists a clue about how to make a bionic hand that patients would be able to control like a real one. And he was about to become one of the first test patients for the most advanced bionic hand ever made.
Let's try it again.
The way I see bionics is having the ability to move a part of the body, if you like, as near as possible to how it used to be.
A patient, when they have an amputation, usually has a phantom limb. The muscles contract in the forearm as if the hand was there. And what we do is use the surface electrodes that pick up those signals from the muscles contracting, and then we use those to control the hand.
Every time you use a muscle, there's a tiny, tiny voltage on the surface of the skin. I'm using these electrodes to control the opening and closing of this hand. That's exactly what Evan does when he controls his. And I can actually get that down to quite a fine control as well.
Well, it's a huge leap forward. Existing hands have one motor and one gearbox. These two fingers don't exist. They're on a chassis basis, and there's a motor in here, and the fingers come together just like this, and that's all it can do. And of course, there's a huge difference between that and having a hand that has 5 digits that move and a thumb that can oppose.
Evan can't wait to try the new bionic hand and hopes that it will help him to regain some of the functionality he's lost.
And they just called me up the other day and they're like, yeah, it's ready. So, I'm going to be Luke Skywalker tomorrow. I am going to be Luke Skywalker.
After the accident, Evan was given a standard old-fashioned prosthetic arm. His new bionic arm will look similar to this, but represents a massive leap forward in technology.
This is the passive hand, it's not the robotic one, this is the original one that I've got from Dorset Orthopedics. It's all like bendy, as you can see, and my arm sort of slots into there.
Do you want to show us how it goes on?
It sort of slots on like this, just push it on, like take the sock off, push it on. And yeah, this one isn't the robotic one. The robotic one, it'll have these are the robotic fingers. And then when it sends the electric signal to the muscle, it picks up this and sends it into a computer in the wrist, and that corresponds to like hand movements.
The fitting of Evan's bionic hand will be much less risky than Sherry's bionic vision. He won't need an operation, and it can be simply attached to his arm. Back in St. Louis, Sherry is on the way to hospital for a CT scan to make sure her malfunctioning system isn't causing any brain damage.
All right, here we go.
This is a CT scan. This is the cranium, the skull. And now we're back at the occipital lobe. And if you look carefully, you can see the outline of that plate with the tiny little dots are those electrodes. This round that you see here is the post that's coming out with the wires attached. And this at the top is actually a grounding plate. You've got so much electricity going on that she's grounded, just like if you grounded your house in case of an electrical storm. That's what they have to get used to also, that they can have seizures because there's so much electrical activity coming through.
Whoa, there's a weird feeling in the top of my head when I turn it off.
It is quite unusual to have this much electrical activity, electrical hardware inside someone's brain. And that's why we've had some trouble getting this to be approved in the United States because of the risk and the complications that we've had.
The scan confirms that the jolts Sherry felt in her skull were caused by the electrical grounding plate. But her bionic vision system still isn't working. The problem must be to do with the external hardware. Now her only option is to travel to New York to have it tested by one of the engineers who originally worked on the project. Back in the UK, Evan has heard that his new bionic arm is finally ready to be fitted. This is the first time that a bionic hand with 5 articulating fingers has been given to patients. Nobody knows quite how it will work.
Oh, cool.
Hi, Evan.
Hi.
How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good to see you.
Cheers.
Okay. Well, it's all ready.
It's all done.
Yeah, it's all ready for us to try. So we'll put the cover on it in a minute. If we can...
Probably should have done that with a tissue instead of on my trousers. It's all looking cool. I want to see them. I'm looking forward to seeing them.
The bionic hand works so instinctively that Evan can immediately control it.
Brilliant.
That's all working perfectly, isn't it?
Yeah.
I tense the muscles in my forearm. So I tense the top muscles to open, like that. I tense the bottom muscles to close, like that. Because I have the phantom feelings and I can feel my fingers moving, I can feel almost that when I'm moving it, I'm moving my hand as well. And then, but obviously it doesn't feel like I'm moving my hand. It's obviously not going to feel like that ever. But I can, it feels like it's moving at the same pace as my hand would be.
The bionic hand mimics the way a real hand grips objects. The final step is for Evan's cosmetic skin to be fitted.
It's literally just a rubber glove. It's a glorified rubber glove that looks like a real hand. It's really exciting just because it is like the forefront of technology as well, isn't it? It's just, yeah, it's really exciting thing to have.
He's doing brilliantly well. He's just got the ability to use the arm from day one. Since as I started fitting him, he's a good client.
Evan's new hand is the most advanced bionic limb ever made. Like Sherry Robertson, he's a patient at the cutting edge of bionic technology, but this isn't always an easy place to be. Sherry's artificial vision system has been malfunctioning, and without FDA approval or funding, the project has been suspended, leaving Sherry in limbo. Desperate for help, Sherry and Susie have flown to New York, where the project was originally based, to try and get some answers.
When, I got her all hooked up and I knew everything was plugged in the way it's supposed to be, and she turned on.
Oh, wait.
What?
Wait, don't move.
For just a flash, she saw something. But then the battery started acting up, and that was it.
At times I'm a little impatient about it, but I know that when things finally start rolling, then we'll get these upgrades built. And the way I look at it is, with it taking so long, I'll just really appreciate it that much more when I finally get it.
Sherry and Susie have contacted one of the original engineers who worked on the artificial vision project, and he agrees to take a look at her system. But since the project is waiting for funding, there's not even a dedicated lab where Sherry's equipment can be tested.
And I keep those things covering it to try to protect it.
Yeah.
Susie is worried that she may have done something to break it.
Well, just wanted to make sure I was doing everything right, so if it was me doing something, I'd quit.
The engineer has to take the system away for more work, leaving Susie and Sherry hopeful that it can be repaired and upgraded soon. But there's still a long way to go before Sherry gets the vision she hoped for. There's only one other person they can turn to who really understands how the artificial vision system works. In fact, he was the very first blind volunteer to put his faith in Dobell's extraordinary bionic invention. His name is Jens Naumann.
He was the first recipient of this artificial vision. He's worked with Dr. Dobell, so he understands a lot more about the inner workings of it than we do, and I hope he can enlighten us. I think he's like me, he's not going to let it go because the scientific part of it has been proven, so it's there. We just got to get someone that we can get to fund it so we can keep it going.
Jens lost his sight in 2 separate accidents when he was a young man, and for years he lived in hope that technology would offer him the chance to see again.
I was just listening to the radio one morning making breakfast when I heard about the cortical stimulation principle on CBC radio and how the technology was about 7 years around the corner. And from that day on, I began to almost count the days.
When Jens found out about Dobell's experiments, he was the first to volunteer. Desperate to see again, he didn't realize just how untested the technology really was until it was too late to go back. He also began to have doubts about how much Dobell himself really understood about the system he'd invented.
Bill Dobell figured I should be able to recognize faces. And that's when I started to have second thoughts about Bill Dobell's real qualifications in this field.
And when Jens came to be activated, something really frightening happened.
On the onset of the experimentation, I had a seizure. And I thought I actually had serious brain damage after, because I could not remember who I was, where I was. And when I did recover, I had this awful feeling that I might have got myself into something that was not yet licensed for a reason. And I did have serious trepidations about continuing the experiment. I remember speaking to the engineers under my breath so that Bill Dobell wouldn't hear and say, look, let's not increase the voltage as quickly as Bill Dobell wants, in order to save my brain, so to speak.
But gradually, the risks began to pay off. So much so that a few months later, Jens gave an amazing demonstration of his artificial vision. He drove a car.
I was able to drive the car by lining myself up, looking out the side window. And that was the first time I realized that this artificial vision actually had great potential.
Sherry hopes that since Jens worked on the system with Dobell, he can give her some idea of what the next stage of her treatment might be. What she doesn't know is that his system has now completely broken down, and he's now thinking of having it removed.
How are things going with your system?
My system, it's kind of in retirement right now. What about yours?
Oh, mine's not working at the moment either.
What happened?
Well, I'm not really sure. Tony is taking it to get it fixed.
Well, I have the same thing. I'm thinking about maybe getting mine taken out.
Oh.
Because it's so uncomfortable at times. You know, suddenly blood runs down, suddenly it just hurts like a huge pimple. I mean, it does hurt. And I'm just wondering if you've ever considered, like, are you going to live with this to the rest of your life?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's nice.
The potential for Sherry right now, considering she already has these electrodes in her head, is immense. The big holdup is money. It's really difficult to say whether or not it's going to go ahead tomorrow, next year, or in 10 years. And that's a revelation for all of us that now have these systems in our heads.
But while Jens has given up on his own artificial vision system, he still believes that Sherry's has enormous potential, and that through her the dream of true bionic vision may one day be realized.
You know, you're really excited about getting this moving.
Yeah.
And you know, you have every reason to be, because you're actually the youngest patient that had the full big electrodes. With you, the experimentation, it looks so positive.
We need these upgrades, Jens.
We need these upgrades.
I think it's going to take something like what we're doing, what we're pushing, for them to realize, hey, it's there. I mean, it's there. Do something about it. Don't just let these people have these things in their head and say, well, I'm sorry, you know, we just got to keep pushing. We just can't let it go. You got to keep yourself going. You got to stay positive.
Sherry knows that she has a long road ahead of her to get her system working properly. The dream of bionic vision is proving tougher to realize than she had hoped. "18-year-old Evan Reynolds has been fitted with the world's most advanced bionic hand. Controlled entirely by impulses from his brain, it replicates many of the functions of the hand he has lost. Now he must adapt to his new life as a cyborg, a bionic man.
Yeah, well, obviously I've got it at home now and it's an amazing piece of technology. And yeah, I'm looking forward to using it for what it's made for. And obviously it's going to help me with stuff like carrying 2 beers to the bar. You just can pick up, just being able to do stuff that previously I wasn't able to do.
After just a few days at home, Evan uses his bionic arm as a natural extension of his body.
When I squeeze and it meets some resistance, it'll stop with that resistance. So as you can see, like I can even pick up like an egg or something like that. Just
Evan's mum Sharon is amazed by the bionic arm.
Just try and grab me. How did it go with opening the front door?
yeah, it was right. I couldn't use the key because I can't quite get the sort of grip.
I think I've said to you I'm a bit scared it's going to get left somewhere in a pub or
Yeah, probably.
somewhere like that, and that maybe we really need to put your name inside it. Please return to. No, I'm just glad you got it, and I think it will make a difference. But it's another change, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. It's another thing I need to get used to. Another thing I need to sort of...
Yeah.
Another thing I need to just adapt to. And because obviously I'm so used to not having one at the moment and not having that like functionality of like being able to do stuff that I have to relearn using this arm again.
Yeah.
While Evan is delighted with his bionic arm, Sherry Robertson has returned home to St. Louis without her bionic vision system. She now has no choice but to get on with her life and hope that it can be upgraded soon. Her school friend Kerry is writing a story about her for the local paper to raise some publicity.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Hi. It's me. How are you?
Oh, it's been too long. It doesn't cease to amaze me how positive Sherry is, how she looks at life and the sense of humor that she has with everything she's been through. Sherry's got actually a fuller view of life than I do. Where do you see yourself from here on out with this device and the upgrade that's going to happen, and what do you see yourself doing?
I'm going to keep pushing, you know, doing interviews and trying to get the word out there about this so we can get some funding, because once we get the upgrade and I'm hooked up for the upgrade and I can actually, you know, wear it around for more than an hour without it breaking my back, I would like to go back to school, get my master's in crisis counseling.
Crisis counseling?
Crisis. Since I've kind of had a few crises myself, I think I would be a good person to be able to do that.
Just to know that, you know, you're blind and you have this on, and it can help you see and know more of the world around you. That's amazing. That is truly amazing. And then to know that someday she's going to have this upgrade and she's going to use all those electrodes to see even more. I hope one day she sees my face. I really do. So when I laugh at a joke she tells me, she can see the expression, fully see the expression on my face.
Also helping Sherry move forward is the new man in her life, her boyfriend Dave, who, like Sherry, lost his sight when he was younger. As a blind person, Dave is fascinated by the potential of Sherry's bionic vision.
Well, Sherry, how does this compare back when you had your sight, though? Because I know you once had your eyesight and I had my eyesight.
Nothing at all like what you see when you can see. But just knowing, you know, when those flashes of light go off, and I know something is there by me, that's just incredible. And when I finally can use all of my electrodes and I'll see the outline, and I'll know what I'm looking at, whether it's a person or a car or whatever, that just blows my mind, because they told me I would never see anything again. So it is kind of, I guess you could say, archaic, kind of cavemanish, just seeing little matrix dots, but it's incredible.
It's been heartbreaking, it's been exciting, it's been a learning. Every day we learn something new. We meet wonderful people that want to help, but we've made it, you know, and we get this upgrade for her. She wants to go back to school to be a crisis counselor, and I'm going to be an old lady one day, and she can take care of me. So if the Lord lets me live that long.
Facing their fears and future head-on, 10 teenagers experience life behind bars and challenge all our perceptions of crime and punishment in our new series Banged Up, starting Monday on 5. Next tonight, we've just watched The Fact with RoboChick, and next we've The Complete Fiction with RoboCop 2.